Hello everyone and welcome back to the Retro Recall. I hope you're doing awesome. Well, it's been a minute since I've released a video, well, because I've been traveling and I've been on vacation, so it's kind of difficult to do some videos, but we're back and this is one of those systems I found while I was on vacation. We have a Hewlett-Packard desktop PC that I paid $9.99 Canadian for, plus taxes and all that fun stuff. I found it at a thrift store. I have no idea if it works, so I figured, hey, let's explore this system together on the Retro Recall. We have lots to do. Let's get right to it. And welcome back. Here we are with this beautiful Hewlett-Packard Pavilion A1211N desktop PC. Now, I did feature a similar desktop PC. It was a Hewlett-Packard A1320N on the channel already. If you haven't seen that video, it's right here. It actually featured Windows Media Center as well. So it was definitely something that was, it was a fun project and a fun video to do. But when I saw this as well, I just had to grab it for $9.99. I figured, you know what, let's see if it works and take our chances. I just love the OEM look of these computers. So as I mentioned, it was $10 Canadian plus taxes. So I'm just going to remove that sticker from the chassis and we'll go over the design. The coloring of the system, we do have gray with more of the white finish on the front, kind of similar to some of the Dells I've seen of this era. The system I had prior, the other Hewlett-Packard, is gray as well, but it had like a dark gray finish. I don't know if it depicted different models or different years, but that other Hewlett-Packard that I had was a Pentium 4. This is an AMD CPU, at least that's what it says on the front with these OEM stickers on the front. Well, I mentioned this in another video before. I really enjoy getting systems like this with this OEM sticker on it, like all the different OEM stickers. I really enjoy that because it really brings you back in time to all the cool things that you saw that the computer was featured with. You don't get that like you used to. And, you know, so to me, it's kind of nostalgic that way. Unfortunately, this condition of this system is nowhere near the condition that was in the other computer. So I think if we end up restoring this computer, we're going to, well, essentially remove the stickers, unfortunately. I think they're damaged enough and they're faded, and this has seen a bit of sun for sure. This is a bit of yellowing on here as well. The camera's not really picking it up, but there is. All right, let's go through the overview of the computer itself. So it says, can your PC do this? Burn, flip, burn. Create custom labels directly to disk with LightScribe DVD ±RW drive. And it gives you a little symbol down here, no doubt for some fine print somewhere that you would read. It says C box label for something, but it probably gives you additional details, kind of saying, hey, it's not just as easy as that. But that's a LightScribe technology that was part of Hewlett-Packard's offering. And it says LightScribe DVD ± writer CD writer. And in this particular case, this drive is populated, branded Hewlett-Packard as well, which is nice. That other computer, the 1320N system I had, did not have the drive populated, but I did have one, so I was able to put one in. And then we have a secondary bay that we have. It says 3500 plus AMD Athlon 64 processor. I'm not sure if this system has that inside, because again, I don't even know if there's a motherboard in this. I think there is. I think I saw the ports in the back I/O. But again, I'm looking at this for the first time on this video, just as you guys are seeing it. So we have 512 megabytes of memory, 250 gigabyte hard disk drive, integrated ATI Radeon Express 200 graphics. Now, I'm not exactly sure what was in the other HP. I'd have to look that up again, but you know, I'm guessing this was more of the entry level. I mean, the nomenclature of the actual model seems to be the lesser model, so that's probably what we're getting in this system. So we do have a smart card multi-reader bay in the front in the third kind of expansion here. We have a smart media, we have compact flash 1 and 2, we have MMC SD memory stick pro, so it does accept that Sony standard, and then we have the USB 2 in the front, which was very, very handy at the time, having access to front I/O, especially, sound and things like that. Continuing on, we have this little door that flips up and down, which is nice to see that that's functional still. I know that some of these systems over the years that has broken where it either doesn't stay up or just completely broke off. Now we do have the front I/O, but you can see how this case would have been used for various models because you don't see anything populated in these ports in the front, just in the audio and firewire and things. We'll go over that in a moment because it does have this front plastic bezel that is missing. I'm fortunate that this system does or did come with this. It just fell off because, again, finding one would be difficult to do. But we do have our front audio jacks, 3 of them. We have a 1394 Firewire connection and 2 additional USB 2 ports. So you have 3 in total, which is nice to have access in the front if you had, say, media cards, like a USB stick or dongles and things like that, or something quick you wanted to plug in the front. Generally, your mouse and keyboard would plug in through the back, or you'd have a wireless dongle at the time to allow you to have wireless capability on your system. All right, so everything you need for digital photos, more than 50 million consumer PCs sold. It says, hard to read here, but it says protection out of the box with Norton Internet Security 2005. I'm trying to interpret what it says. It says award-winning 24/7 support. So these 2 stickers are actually the same identical stickers that were on the 1320N system I did already. These are not, obviously, because there's different stats that are inside this particular system, different hardware. So down the bottom, we do have our design for Microsoft Windows XP and graphics by ATI Radeon Express case badges, as well as the AMD 64 Athlon CPU case badge as well. Now, the other system that I had, that other HP, had along the top here, it says featuring, I think it said, or something about, it says Microsoft Windows XP Media Center Edition 2005. That particular system was built for Windows XP Media Center Edition, whereas this system may or may not have been at the time. And generally, I don't pay a lot of money for these sort of systems because, when you see a random system, you don't know if it's tested or not. But I mean, just given the fact that it's an OEM case and the fact that I do see the condition of it is in pretty darn good condition, I don't mind spending the $10 for it. So Hewlett-Packard logo embossed on the side, and we do have Windows XP Home Edition, our license. So, I mean, right away we know that this did not come with Media Center Edition. So the performance of this system was geared towards the XP Home Edition operating system. So on the back, I mean, it was nice of them to include a power cable. We're just going to remove that. I am going to test the power supply on my power supply tester before I power this up, just because, again, not knowing if it is damaged or not, does work. Because if this was in that same era, the capacitor plague, it's good to test that out. So along the back I/O, we have 2 PS2 ports. We have a printer port or LPT port. We have a VGA or graphics port. We do have 4 additional USB ports along the back, another 13 Firewire, and built-in integrated Ethernet. We have our SP-Diff out, digital audio out, and then we have, of course, 3 additional audio ports in the back. So I like having the front audio because it's just easier to plug in, say, your headphones and things like that if you're working on the system. But again, having it back in the back is obviously the standard, especially for speakers and things like that. And it looks like we also have a modem, and we have what looks like factory covers here, which is nice to see them populated. Okay, let's turn the system around and see what the condition is of the other side. All right, so on this side, it looks like we have a bunch of ventilation to show off, which is great, especially for an OEM system having ventilation. And we have our HP logo embossed, similar to the other side as well. Looks like we have some coffee spilt on it or something, definitely along the side. We have some scratches, but not very noticeable because of the gray paint versus, say, like a black OEM case or things like that, where you'd have, you see the metal gouges. It's unfortunate when you have things like this happen, but in overall condition is fairly good. I mean, there's no dings or major dents and things like that on the chassis, so it's really good. All right, let's open this system up. I'm going to flip the camera around so we can get a better view of inside the computer. Okay, here we are with the inside view of the OEM Hewlett-Packard desktop PC. I did remove the side of the case. It was just one thumb screw, which is really convenient. It is a captive screw, so it's nice that it doesn't leave the case so you don't end up losing it. Okay, we have a Hi-Pro ATI ATX power supply, 300-watt power supply by the looks of things. It's looking a little bit dirty. I expect it to be a little dirtier, but goodness knows what it looks like inside, but definitely a lot of air. Usually when I see a lot of these older systems, these are just caked and muddled with just hair and dirt and grime. I'm not seeing a whole bunch of it here. So we do have, looks like a toolless design, which is nice. This looks like to be a little snapped off. So someone was definitely working hard at removing whatever was there. Probably by the looks of things, it looks like possibly the hard disk has been removed. Yeah, I don't see a hard disk here anymore. And I'm wondering if it's missing like a drive caddy or drive cage that would go here. That would be, I see the couple mounts that it could slide onto, and I think that's what this contained. But they definitely did a job ripping that hard disk out of there. We have our optical drive up top. That's our IDE drive. We do have the wires going into our various ports that we saw on the front of the chassis. We have all of our, by looks of things, wires just kind of hanging out here. I'm not exactly sure. I'm looking to see if that, well, it could have been a SATA. Yeah, here we go. So I was wondering, so I was looking at the IDE cable going to the optical drive, and I was wondering where that hard disk would have plugged in. But I mean, you know, where the port is, where the IDE connector is, not necessarily would go where it is, where it's lined up. But I do see that we do have, well, clearly that we do have our SATA connections that would have been to that particular drive. So we have our CPU, fan, cooler, everything intact. We are going to fire this up just to see if it works. I get lots of people that message and say, hey, apply the thermal paste or do some cleaning and things like that. Listen, I paid $10 for the system. Very easy to test out to see, make sure it works, make sure we're going to be able to fire it up. And if it works, it's worth the restoration. We'll definitely do that. Continuing on. So we have our chipset, heatsink. We do have a PCI Express 16. That definitely opens up the possibilities for graphics card expansion possibilities. So that's really nice. And we have 3 additional PCI connectors on the motherboard. It does look like an Asus motherboard. It says ABAE-LE. Interesting that Hewlett Packard had gone with something that wasn't branded HP. So it's nice to see that it is an Asus motherboard. I like Asus motherboards myself. I do see Asus branded chips up top, so it is definitely an Asus motherboard. But yeah, it's great to see that they had used this sort of motherboard in this system and it's standard, which is great because then I can change out the power supply and not worry about that. Certain OEMs went down the path of having multiple different types of interfaces for their power supplies, making it more difficult today to replicate them and or get them connected to motherboards. Okay, so we have 4 banks of memory here that is actually populated. So we're going to remove one of them. We have, it looks like Samsung memory, PC 3200. So it looks like DDR memory. So 256 megabytes of DDR PC 3200 memory. It says CL3 RAM. Okay, so that's great that that's populated. We're going to pop that back in. It's probably not going to boot now because every time I disturb memory, it just doesn't work. Okay, we have that. We do have the ATI XP here. You can see the chip on the motherboard. So we do have our coin cell battery that's populated as well. Okay, so outside of that, everything looks to be intact outside of the hard disk. It's kind of a shame the hard disk wasn't left in. I know I encourage people to take it out. Would have been a cool experiment to see what was on this system booting up. All right, let's get the bench all turned around, get the monitor, keyboard, and mouse all set up, and see what we can do to get this system powered up. Okay, and we're back with the tower on its side. Still, I have the keyboard, mouse, and monitor hooked up over here, but we'll see that in a moment. I just wanted to disconnect the ATX power connector from the motherboard and plug it into my power supply tester. I've also placed a SATA hard disk attached to the tester to put a little bit of load on it as well, just to kind of give an idea of the system to make sure nothing goes puff with magic smoke and see if we are able to continue on with the test of this system. Okay, so you can see here our plus and minus 12 volts and our 5 volt rails all look good, and our 3.3 volt is also showing good as well. So that's a good indication that we're going to be able to continue on here. All right, I'm going to disconnect this and get this all situated and see if we can power up the system. Okay, here we are back with the keyboard, monitor, and mouse, all branded Hewlett Packard, which I kind of look at and wonder if it was meant for these sort of desktops that I have in the collection now. So it's really nice to see all of this ensemble all together and matching. Okay, I'm going to flip the switch to the power bar, turn it on, because like I said, when I plug this in right away, it just fires up. And I do have the hard disk plugged in on the bottom just to put some load on and see what happens. Let's go to F1 for setup. And here we are. So everybody, we do have a posting $10 thrift store find computer. Let's see what this is all about. So our system time is showing October 2nd. Well, that is correct. The time is a bit off by a couple hours. It's slightly into the evening now. It could have been a different time zone. We do have the language. It's set to English US. It is detecting that we do have the Hewlett Packard DVD writer, but we also have our Maxter 200 gigabyte SATA hard disk. Like I said, I left that installed just to see if it would pick it up. We do have 1 gigabyte of memory of PC. It says PC 2700. I had to go through the memory banks and look at it. I think it was 3200 RAM that was in this, but it's detecting as PC 2700, which could have been the smallest or the slowest memory in that series. But we are showing 4 256 megabyte sticks of memory, and all 4 of those slots are populated. Setting items on this menu as incorrect values may cause your system to malfunction. Don't worry, we'll try to be careful. All right, so we have a CPU AMD Athlon 64 processor of 3500 plus. The naming convention back then, especially when they were competing with Intel, naming it what it was versus what the actual clock speed was. I guess they were kind of saying that, well, it's the equivalent of. But either way, I know it confused the heck out of me back in the day, and I just stuck with Intel. But we have AMD Athlon 64 3500 plus, running at 2.2 gigahertz with 128K of L1 cache, and our L2 cache is set to 512K. Plug and play OS, yes. Primary video adapters, PCI, so it does have integrated graphics. And our onboard video memory size is set to 64 megabytes, which is currently shared memory with the memory installed in on the motherboard. That said, having that expansion ability in that PCI expansion slot opens up the world of possibilities for this particular system. Okay, onboard 1394 is enabled, our SATA adapter is enabled, USB legacy mode supports auto, our LAN is all enabled, so everything's looking really good. And like I said, I think that the coin cell is holding a charge, so it's keeping all these settings intact. So this is probably would have been the last kind of configuration that the system would have been under. So IO device configuration, so you can go in and change the IO device, especially for resourcing if you have any issues with resources for the parallel port. Hardware monitor, we are currently running our CPU at 28 degrees C, which is nice and cool. CPU fan speed to 1700 RPM and the system fan speed, because if you noticed, I didn't talk about it, but there is a case fan in there as well that's being monitored, so that is running slightly slower, but great for ventilation. Now, I did notice there was quite a bit of dirt on the CPU, like within the fan, so definitely requires some TLC to make sure that this is all cleaned up. But so far, this is a contender for a restoration, at least in my eyes. So it says after power failure, auto. So I mean, this is where we power on, stay off. I mean, someone had mentioned this to me in the last couple videos ago, where I keep on making this comment where, hey, I plug the computer on, it just turns on automatically, and I don't like that. I want to be able to control that. Well, they just said, check your AC after power failure, after AC power failure. So here it's set to auto, but you can actually tell it to power on, which is what the behavior of this was, or stay off if there's a power failure. That way, if this was set up in a server environment, or you had something running on this computer, that in the event of a power coming back on, it would just power back up and boot into the operating system, especially if you have scripts and things like that running. Under our boot, we have boot time diagnostic screen is currently disabled. It says display the diagnostic screen during boot. Boot device priorities. So right now it's set to the floppy group, which I imagine the cards and the USB would be part of that. We have the CD-ROM group, which is any sort of optical drives. Hard disk group would be next, and then network group after. If it can't find any sort of boot devices past those 3, it will jump onto the network to see if it will boot. But currently we have CD-ROM first and our hard disk second, which is exactly the way I like it, to be honest. I don't know if there's anything installed on this hard disk I just grabbed it from my stash, but I don't think there's anything installed, and I think it has been wiped. So I'm going to pop in Knoppix, and we'll see if we can actually boot into an operating system. So the reason why I do this is just kind of see if an operating system, if the hardware is capable of supporting an operating system on the computer. So sometimes there might be some memory errors or CPU problems, or, as it's running and you're putting load on this and putting additional processing power through this, that there could be something that pops, or there's another issue that was the reason why they decided to get rid of this. So throwing a live environment of, say, a Linux distribution really helps put something in the environment and get it going. So at least that way we're able to see if we're able to, in fact, boot into a regular OS if we decide to restore this. So it's showing Linux, 919 megabytes of RAM because it is shared memory. Our CPU is our AMD 643500 Plus. It does show it's running at 2.2 gigahertz as we saw in the original setup screen, as well as our 512K of cache. Our graphics is our AMD, so our ATI AMD graphics RS480, Radeon Express 200. And then our sound is also the integrated SB400 AC97 audio controller. So you can see how it's detecting the drivers appropriate for this particular computer and chipset. And of course, this was written on one of the chips. I had seen that as well, the SB400. So I could see the sound integrated sound chip on the motherboard. Okay, it's continuing to detect additional hardware, and we'll see if we get into the desktop. And here we are loaded to a desktop, and unfortunately it's not Knoppix. I tried loading Knoppix 9.1 a couple different ways. Unfortunately, it was not able to boot up. And normally, historically, I would stop there and say, okay, there's a problem with the hardware somewhere, whether it's the memory, CPU, compatibility, and what have you. But I remember a lot of people were mentioning in some of my trial videos when I tried different desktops using Knoppix to go into the live environment, most time it works, but sometimes there's a configuration problem or compatibility issue with the drivers that come with this, with the integrated systems or the different hardware that is on the computer you're testing. So I said, okay, well, you know what? I'll give it another shot. I'll just try DSL 2024 in the live environment. And sure enough, it was able to boot without an issue directly to the live environment desktop. So we do have our resource monitor sitting up at top here. We do see it's been up for about approximately 10 minutes, and we do see our memory. Our CPU is only running at 1%. Of course, there's no load on it right now, outside of me just clicking around here. But outside of that, I mean, we are running stable so far. If you haven't seen the video on DSL 2024, please check it out right there. It's a pretty cool OS and neat origin history where this came from. But outside of that, I mean, we do have a stable environment OS running in memory at that, with all the drivers loaded that it loaded up in DSL. And yeah, I mean, it seems like the computer is a candidate to continue working on. All right, let's go to our outro. And here we are at the end of the video. Yes, always a sad moment in the retro recall when we get to this point, but I wanted to kind of stop there for today, where I'm just easing back into making videos again. Back from vacation, back from traveling, and there's so much more to work on. But I really want to ask you guys, what do we do with this computer? I mean, we have a Hewlett-Packard Pavilion A1211N is the model number, with our Athlon 3500 Plus, 512 megabytes of memory it said it came with, but we know we do have 1 gigabyte installed. No hard disk, but I do have that 200 gigabyte SATA hard disk. Unfortunately, we don't have that mount where the hard disk caddy would hold that hard drive in. So I'm going to have to do something to see what we can adjust to make that work for us. But if you feel this is a candidate, let me know down below if this is something that you feel that we should work on, if this is something that you feel that we can restore, and let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see. Remember, we do have the ability to upgrade that memory slightly in this computer. We do have that Asus motherboard in there, which is really nice that HP used that, which really standardizes this particular OEM system. We have the integrated graphics, but I dare say it would be much better to be able to expand and utilize an expansion card. So let me know down in the comments again what you feel we should be using. I'll see what I have in the stash, so to speak. And finally, what operating system should we throw on this computer? I mean, it came with Windows XP Home. I would like to do the same, essentially utilize the era-specific operating system that would kind of go with this computer, and maybe, turn this into a retro gaming rig. Or are we talking maybe throwing on a different Linux distribution on this system and really trying to do something slightly different and bring this into today's internet and working up and running running. But again, let me know down in the comments. I read every one of them. I love the interaction, and it really helps drive this forward. But I think this is a perfect candidate for a restoration. I think we should also remove the stickers, but again, let me know if you think we should. I think they're all shredded, and I really think this computer deserves some proper TLC. That said, if you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Helps this channel grow. We just surpassed 13,000 subscribers, so let's keep on going. Hit the notification button, change it to all. You'll be notified of new content such as this. Please leave a comment down below. Again, as I mentioned, should we restore this system? What should we restore it to? Do we remove the stickers? Do we clean it up? Do we upgrade the memory? Do we upgrade the graphics? What operating system? Again, let me know down in the comments. I love hearing from absolutely every one of you, and I respond to absolutely every comment. Always making new content. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.